All right, what is up, Utah fans? This is Joseph back with the Utah Utes Football Digest, and I know you guys have gotten used to the new studio. That is still a thing. Just for tonight's episode, I want to do it in here. Obviously, you can see it's empty in my home studio, so don't stress. The other studio is still a thing. I just want to make sure you guys know that's why it looks so empty behind me. But good to be hanging out with you guys tonight. Utah plays SUU this week. It's going to be a great time. It's going to be a great game. And there's actually a lot to look for. Seriously, I think there's a lot as Utah fans that we can check out in this game. On top of that, the depth chart came out yesterday, which makes today even more exciting. So we're going to break down the entire depth chart heading into the SUU game. But more than that, we're going to break down what the depth chart looks like. There's definitely some surprises. There's a lot that was chalk, but there's more surprises than I thought. And I think a lot of you guys already know the surprises that I'm talking about. I'm surprised I'm not hearing more Utah fans talk about some of the surprises. But either way, it should be a lot of fun, guys. Again, we are a part of the 1012 network, so we do have some ad reads to do. So Charlie Hustle is the sponsor of the 1012 network. I'm actually wearing their shirt. If you can see, super cool Utah shirt here. Fits really well. It's like a vintage style clothing. You know, this podcast is brought to you by our friends at Charlie Hustle Clothing Company, a vintage inspired clothing company based out of Kansas City that specializes in collegiate and hometown apparel. Charlie Hustle loves the Big 12 Conference and wants every Big 12 fan to be the best dressed this season with their wide selection of officially licensed collegiate apparel. This includes Utah gear, which they launched this summer, again, right here, in honor of the Utes joining the Big 12. Use promo code 101215 for 15% off all non-sale items. With more than 30 schools to choose from, including all 16 Big 12 schools, they've got you covered with all of your collegiate apparel needs. Shop today at charliehustle.com and use the promo code 101215 for 15% off all non-sale items. Again, that's charliehustle.com, promo code 101215 for 15% off all non-sale items. So should be a ton of fun, guys. Let's go ahead and dive into the video. We're going to break down the depth chart, break down what we're looking for against SUU, right? What's going to be important to watch. It's going to be a lot going on. And I think we'll see a lot of question marks answered. But more than that, we'll kind of see where are some of these positions, right? A lot of these positions I feel like have some big question marks, like I mentioned, and it should be a lot of fun for us to diagnose after the game and while we're watching live during the game. Before we dive in, though, guys, make sure you smash the like button. Also, comment down below. I want to know what you think of each position group. What are you watching for? I want to hear your opinions. Anything that specifically surprised you as the depth chart came out. I'll have it up on the screen for a lot of this video, so you guys will get to take a great look at it. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. We put out a ton of Utah Utes football content. So if you're into that sort of thing, which if you're watching this video and you're not, you must be a psychopath. uh, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Outside of that, let's go ahead and dive in. Go Utes. All right, guys, and we are going to be taking a look at the depth chart here. We are going to start with the offensive line. Now, a lot of the question marks on the offensive line have already kind of been answered, right? But I do think it's worth taking a look at and doing a deeper dive. So one thing we've all known since the offseason really got going is that Caleb Lomu would be the starter at left tackle. Redshirt freshman, 6'5", 295 pounds, and Zaru Williams behind him. Now, Zaru has been a guy that's been in the depth for Utah football for a while, 6'8", 317 pounds, massive guy. Hasn't had many reps, so you're not sure exactly what you can expect from him. But left tackle, we knew the situation there. Now let's move on to the question we didn't have an answer to, was these three spots right here. It had not been quite locked in yet before this depth chart was released, and that's left guard Tanoa Togiai, that's center Jaron Kump, and right guard Michael Mokofisi. And in my mind, these three were all in a competition with the two that are backups at left guard and center in Solatoa Moiai and Johnny Maea. And why that's a good thing, guys, is we have our three locked in starters, right? Left guard Togiai, center Jaron Kump, and then we have Michael Mokofisi at right guard. The backups here are very solid. Johnny Maea and Solatoa Moiai are, good players, proven solid guys. And I think, as I mentioned all offseason, this group could change game in, game out for our first 3 to 5 weeks, just so we're all on the same page. Do not think that this group is locked in and the clear best players at their positions. Not that they're not very good. I think it's exciting that it's been figured out, but I do think Maia and Moiai, sorry, some of these names are tough to say, are guys that could go, fight for those spots eventually. So definitely a thing to keep an eye on. Now let's go ahead and move down to right tackle. So this is another change that a lot of us have been aware of. Spencer Fano, freshman standout, started at left tackle his entire freshman year in the Pac-12. Super impressive guy, and really stood out. 6'5", 304 pounds. I'm expecting a big year 2 from him. I think some people might be overhyping him a little, where they're expecting him to be like one of the best tackles in the Big 12. Not saying that he couldn't be. I just think those type of expectations might be a little rich, considering he had, average to slightly above average play last year, which isn't like, don't hear what I'm not saying. He's definitely not bad. He's a guy that I think is going to be one of the best tackles in college football eventually. But is he going to be a dominant star right now? I think right tackle might be a better fit for him. I think he's a big mauling type of guy. I mean, I remember him coming out of high school. The run blocking highlights were very impressive. So if this is a better fit for him, that would make a ton of sense, right? But either way, a guy, Spencer Fano, just don't have this. This is what I hate, is where it's like, hey, we're acting like he's the best tackle in football. And then some fans do this thing where they're not critical ever, where it is honestly almost gross. It's kind of embarrassing to be a part of at times, where it's like they will not be critical of a player. And it is, hey, yeah, he's young, he's going to make mistakes, and he's got a really bright future. I think we're going to see a really good year 2 from him. I'm hoping we'll see a PFF grade in the low 70s, if not mid to high 70s. That'd be super exciting. But that's the offensive line group. Excited to see that kind of get locked in and solidified as we head into this game. Okay, guys, and now we are taking a look at probably the deepest group, especially when you look at high-end talent mixed with kind of depth talent. This tight end room is crazy. And there are definitely some surprises as we take a look at this depth chart. Seriously, I'm sure I'm not the only one. Right out the gate, at wide tight end, Dallin Bentley, he is a guy that in my circles, a lot of people have brought up his name for the past year and talked about how he could be a guy to keep an eye on this year. So I do think that's pretty exciting, because just so you guys know, if you weren't familiar with Dallin Bentley before you saw him at the top of this depth chart, don't be shocked. He has been a guy that I don't think we've seen it a ton in games, but he is a guy that a lot of people have had a lot of hype around, and I would be excited about where he is on the depth chart rather than disappointed about where some other people are on the depth chart, and I'm going to get to that next. So Carson Ryan is not listed as a starter. That is wild to me, right? I think obviously each tight end spot does a different role, and I still expect Carson Ryan to get a lot of playing time, but what's surprising to me is it's Carson Ryan or Miki Sugaturaga. So that tells me that Carson Ryan they're leaning to Carson Ryan as the backup for that spot, but he's not solidified to be the guy at that spot. And I think that's very surprising. I think me, along with a ton of other Utah fans, justifiably have been extremely excited about Carson Ryan. I'm guessing he will see a lot more playing time than this depth chart shows, but this was probably up there as one of the most surprising things for me when I saw this. I would love to hear what you guys think about this tight end breakdown. And I think, again, we've got another surprising thing here where Brant Kuithe's number 1. We all knew that was going to happen, right? Brant, the man Kuithe, one of the best tight ends in the country 2 years ago before his, unfortunate injury. But behind him, we got Landon King or Caleb Lohner. Or, guys, again, just like with Carson Ryan and Miki Sugaturaga, or again, Miki Sugaturaga is a solid talent, and so is Caleb Lohner. They're both exciting guys, but Landon King and Carson Ryan were guys that I think we all had a ton of hype going into this year. I think it's a really good sign for Suguturaga and a really good sign for Caleb Lohner. He's the basketball transfer, right? He's huge. We've seen some awesome highlights at practice, but Landon King, a guy we're all really excited about. I think what I'm going to take away from this tight end depth chart, okay, is that there's still some question marks here for the coaching staff, and they're going to use this SUU game as a preseason-esque type of game to give these guys all some reps. That's what I'm guessing. And you always going to get everyone some reps, but I think it's clear that they haven't named who the next guys up are. I think it's awesome that Bentley's in, but I do think this just tells you that everyone's still fighting. And I think the good sign on this is that means you got six legit guys. Like, you got six guys that are all fighting for reps. And Utah will use some rotation of 3 to 4 tight ends when we have to. And so I think that's a good sign. It is a little confusing, but it's a good sign. Tight end guys, just making an extra note, I really do want to hear your opinions on this tight end room. That's something I would really like to hear. Okay, guys, and I'm going to cover both of these positions together because the first one won't take that long, right? Quarterback, Cam Rising's the guy at quarterback. There was no question about who is the starter, but Isaac Wilson, as we've been getting some hints about recently, is like the guy as quarterback too. I think that's super exciting. And it seems like a really good sign for the future for Utah. You got the Corner Canyon kid, his true freshman year, coming out and locking in that quarterback 2 spot. I think that just kind of tells you that he's got a really bright future here at Utah. And, maybe next year they'll bring in a transfer or something to compete with him for the starting spot. But it does kind of feel like moving into the future. And there's still so much, guys. A year ago this time, we thought Nate Johnson was the future of this program and that Bryson Barnes was the guy at backup quarterback, right? That's not how that's not how that story went. So now we have Isaac Wilson as the guy with a lot of other good talent behind him. And I like that it's not Isaac Wilson or Brandon Rose. It's Isaac Wilson. It's his spot and it's his job to lose. I think he's going to do a good job if he does need to come in to spot fill, and worst case scenario, if he does struggle with his, he's young, right? There's a chance he could struggle if he gets out there. We got good guys behind him. I have a ton of faith in Isaac Wilson. I was a huge fan of him in high school, and I'm excited to see that he's going to play a strong role. And we're going to probably see a lot of film from him against SUU. The backup quarterback, especially with Cam's injury history, I don't think they're going to give him a crazy amount of reps, just being real with you guys. I think once we get a good lead, whenever that time is, they're immediately going to pull Cam and they're going to put Isaac in. Once we get maybe a 3-score lead, as long as it feels good and it's a little later in the game, I think halftime to mid-third quarter, we'll see a lot less of Cam, if not no more of Cam. Depends on where the score is. Now we've got running back, guys. So at running back, this is exciting. So Mekhi Bernard is the guy. I think we all knew that was going to be the case, right? I can't believe he's 6 foot. Is that a typo? Is Mekhi Bernard 6 feet tall? Sorry, guys. I'm looking it up. Yeah, he's 6 feet tall. Am I the only one shocked by that? I thought he was like 5'9" at the tallest. Am I crazy? I thought he was short. I don't know why. That's surprising me. So he's taller than I am. Good for him. Anyways, though, so Mekhi Bernard's the guy. And if you guys are familiar with Mekhi Bernard, you know that he is down in, down out, really solid player, really dependable guy. I think you'd want a little more explosiveness from him at times, but in general, he's a guy that is athletic, is a playmaker, and if there's an opportunity for some yards or to make a play, he will get it done. He's very dependable, great hands at the running back position, and the guy that I think all of us knew heading into this year was going to be running back 1. Worst case scenario, some sort of split time, which I do believe there will be a committee, right? He's not going to be the only guy getting carries. Utah's going to run the ball a lot, and these next 2 guys are going to be fighting for carries as well. Next up, we got Jalen Glover, right, at the running back 2 spot. Can you believe he's a junior already? I remember making his freshman highlight video, like his recruiting video. It is wild to see that he is already a junior. That is wild. But 5'8", 202 pounds. The kid, he runs like a bowling ball, just runs through people and just bounces off, impending tacklers. And he was a guy that averaged over 4 yards a carry on over 500 rushing yards last year. And he's been kind of the forgotten man this offseason. I mean, you really look at it, guys. How many times have you heard the name Jalen Glover this offseason? Seriously, I don't remember any other channel. Like I've mentioned him a couple times, but even me, I'm guilty of at times almost forgetting that he was there when he was our main running back last year. So really weird there. But then we got not at the third depth spot, but the or spot. So fighting for that running back 2 spot, we got Mike Mitchell, who again, guys, is the best high school tape I've seen to date, right? There's been some good one. And honestly, Jalen Glover's was up there as well. He's probably top 8 high school tape. But Mike Mitchell's a special, and the hype around Mike Mitchell continues to build. Athletic, fast, strong, powerful, 6 foot, 211 pounds, has the frame to put on a lot of weight, and has almost a Darren McFadden-esque build. I'm not comparing him to Darren McFadden, but just to give you guys an idea of what we're getting with him. Just long, tall, not quite as long and tall as Darren McFadden. Maybe that's not a great comparison. Anyways, it's exciting to see Mike Mitchell getting his recognition. And I think what this story tells you is these are the 3 guys. 90 to 95% of the carries this year are going to go to a mix of these 3 guys. Feel bad that Dejon Stanley's the odd man out in this situation, but he doesn't feel like the odd man out when it comes to who he is as a player and what he does for this team. He's very fast and a guy that could contribute as well. But these are the 3-headed monster. And I think when you look at this, you got to be very happy that this is like our 3, right? There's not many teams that have a deeper 3-man group than this. That's the running back room for Utah. All right, guys, and now we are talking wide receiver, another position that, to me at least, and sometimes I make statements about things that surprise me, and they don't always surprise you guys, but I like to consider myself pretty in the know. So let's take a look at this depth chart here, guys. Wide receiver had some big surprises on my end. So right out the gate, not a surprise at all. Dorian Singer is the number 1 guy in this offense. Not a surprise at all. He looked awesome in the spring game. I remember before he committed to USC, when he was transferring out of Arizona, he was a guy that I had, tons of excitement about. Guy that I was really hoping Utah would get. We didn't get him, but, a year later we got him, and he looks awesome. So surprising there. No surprise there. Dorian Singer, we all knew it was going to be him. But then take a look at this. So I'm going to touch on the other positions kind of as a whole. So Money Parks and Micah Pittman are the next 2 starting receivers. And Micah Pittman's backup is Dorian Singer. Money Parks' backup is Luca Caldarella. Now, when you're looking at a wide receiver depth chart, there's so many unwritten storylines in this where people could go down and their backup that's written here might not be the actual backup, right? Anyways, though, but you look at this, I think Luca Caldarella, that's awesome that he has solidified himself as a backup. Little surprise, Munir McClain, not anywhere in here. That's a little sad. He's a guy that I've, pounded the table for a lot. But more than that, Damian Alford, Micah Pittman has a starting spot at wide receiver over Damian Alford. That's a little surprising. I know he was a guy a ton of us, looked awesome. Damian Alford, coming out of Syracuse, transferring to Utah, was a guy that a bunch of us had excitement about, and he's not even locked in as the backup. You look at the other 2 spots, Luca Caldarella and Dorian Singer are the backups here. Dadrin Zipperer is fighting with Damian Alford for the backup X receiver. Damian Zipperer is a redshirt freshman, 4-star prospect when he came out of high school to Utah. That's pretty exciting for our future with Dadrin Zipperer. But definitely surprising here. When we look at this wide receiver room, again, Dorian Singer at the X, Money Parks at the Z, Micah Pittman at the R. I think what this is telling me, and I want to hear what you guys think too, but I when I look at this, I see a consistent rotation, right? Where this is a group of about 6 wide receivers that will rotate in and out of these positions. And especially like Mekhi Pittman and Dorian Singer. My guess at what this means is Mekhi Pittman and Dorian Singer will take turns at the R, while Dadrian and Zipper and Damian Alford will be able to rotate in to the X. Same with Money Parks and Luca Caldarella. I don't think that'll be as much of a rotation, but again, excited to see Luca there. He was a guy that's put in the work. His dad comments on the channel sometimes. Good to see that. But overall, again, another really deep room. I want to hear you guys' thoughts on this room. But wide receiver, a couple surprises, nothing shocking though. I think the number one thing for me is just that Micah Pittman is locked in as the R, where Dadrian Zipper, Damian Alford are fighting for spots. I thought Damian Alford would be locked in at one of the wide receiver positions. So surprising there, but either way, a good room that I still expect to see a ton of rotation from. And again, surprised Munir McClain doesn't have any sort of backup spot or fighting for a backup spot. Okay, guys, and now we are taking a look at the defensive line for Utah as we start off with the defense. So, defensive end, Connor O'Toole locked in at the left end spot, a guy that has continued to impress and a guy that has been a hometown favorite for a while now. Not surprised at all to see him locked in at one of those spots. Now we're going to move on to defense, and then we have Paul Fitzgerald behind him. Paul Fitzgerald, solid backup from Utah State, I believe. Yeah, he's the Utah State transfer. He was a guy that had some good PFF grades in the Mountain West Conference. Again, that's not P5 football, but still an exciting backup, and exciting to see that it's not an or spot there, right? That's a locked-in backup. And don't forget, with this defensive end room and the edge rusher room, whatever you want to call it, those guys are going to see a lot of rotation. So I think what that tells you is Paul Fitzgerald will be a guy that you do see on the field. He's number 40, but Connor O'Toole, number 81's got it locked in. Now we're going to move on to Junior Tafuna at the left defensive tackle position, and Aliki Vamahi is his backup. No surprise there at all, right? I think we both knew that Aliki Vamahi would be one of the rotation guys, or at least one of the rotation guys, maybe a starter. But in a second, we'll talk about the guy that locked in the other starting spot. And Aliki Vamahi, again, just like at defensive end, we're going to see a strong rotation of these guys. It's how a 4-3 defense works, right? These guys keep rotating in to keep them fresh. But Aliki Vamahi, playmaker, Junior Tafuna, ton of hype. They're both good defensive tackles. And, the D-tackle room looks great so far. I think one thing that surprised me is here. Keanu Tanavasa has the starting spot locked in. That doesn't surprise me. And I'm super excited to see him have that starting spot locked in. He is a guy that really came on last year and looks like he could be a devastating force at D-tackle. Very athletic, very imposing, and explosive. He gets in the backfield and makes plays. This is what surprised me, guys. Tavita Fotu or Samodi Peppa. Now, Samodi Peppa, junior year now, and he's made some plays. He's a good player. I wonder what it is. He's a big guy, 6'3", 332. I wonder if they just can't rely on him down in and down out. I really don't know why this is. Maybe Fotu's been impressing at practice. Maybe that's the case. But Peppa, for a lot of us that have been paying attention to this D-line, I think we all had high hopes for him, still do have high hopes for him. But you can kind of take this as a glass half full, glass half empty sort of situation where you could say that it's exciting that Tavita Fotu must be good enough to be fighting for the spot with Samodi Peppa, or you could say, hey, it's a little concerning. Why is someone pushing Samodi Peppa out of that spot? But what I would take from this overall is we could see a rotation of all 5 of these guys, right? Fotu, Peppa, Tanuvasa, Vamahi, and Tafuna. Utah and the Polynesian pipeline, man. That it's all every name. But very cool. So D-tackle room looks great. Definitely a high floor room. I could see us by midseason feeling like any concern here. Not that there's real concerns about D-tackles, but it is like, hey, maybe we're not seeing the ceiling we might want, but I think we'll see a high floor, right? If one of these guys is struggling, there's a bunch of depth and good talent behind them to come in and take some of those reps. Now we move to defensive end, and there's a couple things to point out here, okay? So this is unique to me, right? This is unique to me, and I think to a lot of you guys. I expected Logan Fano to have one of these spots locked in, while Van Fillinger and Connor O'Toole were the ones fighting for the other spot. But I'm guessing O'Toole had a heck of an offseason and looks awesome for him to have beaten out Logan Fano for the spot, or it could mean that Logan Fano doesn't look 100% after the injury. Who knows what's going on there? We'll know eventually as we see them hit the field and see how these guys are looking. But Logan Fano and Van Fillinger are fighting it out for the defensive or right side edge rusher spot. With Ko O'Connor as a backup, a guy that I'm excited to see start to come into his own, and it sounds like he's going to be able to get in there and steal some reps, which should be fun. He's a really dynamic pass rusher, obviously a little undersized at 6'3", 233, but on third downs, definitely a guy that can make an impact. But Logan Fano and Van Fillinger, and again, this D-line room is ridiculous, guys. Like the worst guy on the depth chart is a Mountain West Conference transfer that graded pretty damn well in Paul Fitzgerald, a bunch of studs in the D-line room, and an edge rusher group that is going to rotate in and out. Like, you look at this, guys, we have how many people? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 defensive linemen that are all legit D linemen that I expect to see in some sort of rotation. Opposing offenses are going to have a bad time. I don't know if there's any D line like ours in the Big 12, and I expect us to, impose our will and show these Big 12 offenses what's up. But that's the D line room. Very exciting group. A couple surprises, but nothing too crazy. Hey guys, and now we're talking about linebackers. It's pretty chalk here, but some things to go ahead and mention. So right out the gate, we got the rover linebacker or the right linebacker. Excuse me. Karine Reed's the starter. He's got it locked in. There was questions of he might have gone pro last year. He's one of the best players on this team, and you knew he would have one of the starting spots locked in. So not even a little bit of a surprise there. Josh Calvert is his backup. Josh Calvert's been on the team for a while now. He's a senior, and he is he was a 4-star prospect, I believe, when he came out. So I think we all kind of expected, those of us that have been following it, for him to have one of the depth spots in this linebacker room. Then we got Sione Fotu, and once Lavani Damuni got injured, we were aware Fotu was taking the spot. He'll be the MAC or middle linebacker for this defense. Trey Reynolds behind him. This is the only thing that I think is worth mentioning. So it's stud linebacker. Lander Barton's locked in. We all know Lander Barton, big fan. We knew he would have one of the spots. I expect him to possibly declare for the NFL draft after this year if it goes as expected. But behind him, Maroney and a guy that recently got back from his church mission and was a walk-on a while back for Utah. He's one of the backups here, but Jonathan Hall is another one of the backups. So Jonathan Hall transitioning over here to stud linebacker and fighting for, depth reps here. I think that's pretty exciting. And I think, a good linebacker room. I don't love the depth, being honest with you guys here. No one sucks or anything like that, but I do think so far this is one of the positions where and I've seen people mention this, and as I look at it, I understand what they're talking about, where, if one of our stars did get injured, I do think there's some concern there, and I think that's legitimate. But we got a good group, and, with all that talented depth that backing these guys up, if someone does go down, you got a lot of talent that you can put in there, and hopefully they can start to make a name for themselves. That's the linebacker group. Really good top-end group. You'd want a little more depth, but we're not at practices every day. We don't know how the rest of these guys are looking. Overall, good group, though. That's linebackers. All right, guys. And finally, we're down to the DBs. We'll go over the cornerbacks first, then we'll talk about the safeties. DB's pretty chalk outside for a couple things and a couple good things, right? So right at the gate, Zamaya Vaughn and Keenan Johnson. Now, if anyone is surprised that Keenan Johnson is one of the starters, you must not have been watching my channel, because I wanted Keenan Johnson on this team before he even said he was coming to Utah. He was a legit P5 starter at outside corner and fills a hole for us that we have had for a really long time. Cameron Calhoun is locked in as the backup for both spots while fighting with other guys for the backup spot, but still he's the 2. So I would imagine if someone did go down, he'd be the clear guy to come in and fill the role. Now, Elijah Davis is one of the backups for right corner. And this is surprising right here. I think I've seen people mention this. John Randall Jr. is one of the backups for left corner. John Randall Jr. was a 4-star running back coming out of high school, and now he's going to be fighting for the backup spot at corner. That's something to keep an eye on as the season continues. If something, and don't forget, Utah is known for rotating corners. I'm wondering what this year will look like at left and right corner. Usually, historically, what we would see is the starting corner. So that, it was Maya Vaughn, and before him, it was Clark Phillips and Jalen Johnson, all that stuff. But the starting corner would play almost every rep of the game, but the corner 2 would do a lot of rotating in and out with different guys. Like last year, we had Miles Battle and, forget the guy's name, but he was frustrated me for a long time. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. You guys probably know who I'm talking about. I don't know why his name's escaping me. But anyways, I'm wondering if this year we'll see Keenan Johnson and Zamiah Vaughn out there as the 2 clear starters for almost every rep of the game, because I think Keenan Johnson's better than any cornerback we've had so far. Now, against SUU, I think we'll see these other guys get in and get some reps. But as the season goes, I wonder what that'll look like. Then this is pretty exciting, guys. This is an exciting one. Nickelback, we have Smith Snowden, officially our nickel corner. He's the perfect guy, right? That 5'10", 185 frame. He's the perfect guy to play nickel corner. He is like glue in man coverage, not afraid to get in there, get dirty, and looks like a playmaker. The Utah Gatorade Player of the Year a couple of years ago when he came out. He's a sophomore now, a guy that I'm super excited about, and I love that he is locked in the nickel corner spot. The more we can get him on the field, the better. Quamari Shemwell, a freshman, and Quamari Shemwell's tape was very impressive. He was not raw at all. I think he's a guy that's been pretty refined, and if he does need to come in and fill some spots, he definitely can do it. On top of that, even if he had to go play outside corner, I wouldn't be distraught. I think his tape looked seasoned. It looked polished, like he's been playing football for a long time. Again, I think Smith Snowden's a better option, and that's why he's a starter. But I like Quamari Shemwell behind him. So that's the cornerback room for Utah there. And now we'll go ahead and move on to talking about safety. Tao Johnson or Nate Ritchie as the starting free safety. What in the world? Am I right? I mean, I think we all kept telling ourselves Tao Johnson will be the starter at free safety, right? That's been the headline, but it's or Nate Ritchie. I mean, that's pretty surprising. I think it tells you Nate Ritchie's probably doing really well. But an even bigger storyline is Alaki Gilman. I think that's how you say it, something like that. Alaki Gilman. There's let's scroll to the right and we'll see the actual translation. Right, let's see. Okay. Oh, wait. Just so we all know how to freaking say it. Alakai Gilman. So that's how you say it. Okay, now let's go back over here. So just so if you guys were wondering too, that name's been frustrating me for a while. Alakai. But Alakai Gilman is locked in at strong safety. It's weird to me. Wouldn't you imagine if it was going to be this way? It'd be like Tao Johnson, free safety, and Alakai Gilman or Nate Ritchie. And Alakai Gilman, to me, has been a weird one where it felt like, why would he transfer to Utah as a senior to be a backup? And everyone was acting like he wasn't going to be anything at Utah. And I kept wondering, like, why is no one talking about this guy? He was a starter at Stanford. Stanford wasn't good, but he was a starter. And then we got Maurice Rabbit Evans, another, playmaker. The guy looked really good on tape. Remind me a lot of Clayton Isbell, the storyline and the tape. But overall, a good safety room, right? Lots of guys that could rotate in and make a name for themselves in that room. But little confusing. Hopefully, as we get into the season, we know who the 2 clear guys are. And and kind of what's going on with Teo Johnson or Nate Ritchie. I'm excited to see how that storyline plays out there. And that's all the DBs for Utah. Okay, guys, and that was the full depth chart as we head into SUU and kind of some stuff to watch. I'll kind of do a quick breakdown of what to watch at different positions before we close out of here. You know, offensive line, I'm sure these position battles aren't done, but it does tell you who they're at least leaning towards, if not solidified with, heading into the season. Keep an eye on as Maia and Moiai get reps. That's number 62 and 53 in the interior offensive line. As they come into the game towards the later part of the game, look at how they do, right? And how they look as they come in, because that'll be a big factor. Also, keep an eye out for how this tight end room shakes out, right? Like, Dallin Bentley's listed as the Y tight end with Carson Ryan, Mickey Sugaturaga behind him. Brant's the number one, right? The U, and then you got Landon King and Caleb Lohner behind him. See how those backup reps look, right? Something I'm going to keep an eye on is who's getting a lot of those backup reps and how do those guys look, right? Maybe things aren't playing out the way we thought it was, because the tight ends confused me. Quarterback, Cam Rising should be, getting in there, making hopefully quick work of SUU to where the second half can be, mainly like a preseason game where you're getting the backups in and seeing what they're capable of. At wide receiver, I want to see what Damian Alford looks like, right? He's not listed as a starter, but another thing where let's see how those backup rotations go, right? How many reps is each guy getting? Then as we move into defensive line, I want to know how many reps each guy's getting. Does my hypothesis that all 10 of these guys are going to kind of rotate in some rotation, and as the season gets going, we'll see them start to solidify, like, okay, this guy's getting 70% of the reps, this guy's getting 30, this guy's the clear third down edge rusher. I'm excited to see how that works out. Linebacker, keep an eye out for how the backups look when they do get in, because if they struggle, that could be a really bad sign. Corner looks awesome. I'm excited to see how Keenan Johnson does. I've built up a lot of hype around him. I'm excited to see Smith Snowden take a starting spot. I'm excited to see how Cameron Calhoun looks and Kwamari Shemwell and John Randall Jr. That'll be a fun one, huh? What does the converted running back look like? Utah is just damn good at that, huh? They bring a guy in as just an athletic beast and just they put him at DB, and it usually works out really well if Teo Johnson's any part of the story. And speaking of Teo Johnson, taking a look at the safeties, see how that room looks, right? What does that actually look like? The oars, who's getting the reps, right? When the game starts, who's getting the reps? And as we get later on, how does everyone look? Are they missing plays? Are they making plays? I'm quite excited to see how that goes. Should be a really fun game, guys. Obviously, it's SUU. We're expecting to dominate. I think that should be the expectation. But, look at every position group as you watch the game. Do they look as good, or have they answered some of the concerns you have? Do they look better than what you thought? I'm excited to kind of dive into all this. It should be a great time, guys. Before we get out of here tonight, make sure you like the video. Also, comment down below. Just give me your breakdown of all the position groups. We spent a lot of time talking about them, so you probably have some opinions on them. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. We put out a ton of Utah Utes football content, so if that's your thing, be around for the ride.